Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome if this is your first time here. So this is going to be a love and spirituality reading for water signs, Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio. And I'll also be doing an extended reading, so I'll leave the link to that in the description box down below. All right, water signs. So let's jump into the messages that I heard for you during my meditation session earlier. So what I was hearing is that some of you are trying to manifest something new into your life, something that's going to bring you warmth is what I was specifically hearing. So for some of you, it could be that you want to manifest a new partner, like you're looking for that love, that warmth, that comfort that comes with a healthy relationship. For some of you, I was hearing that you literally are seeking out a new home. And I say literally because what I was hearing is that some of you are seeking it out literally as in an apartment or a new house, but some of you are seeking it figuratively, I guess you would call it, like a home within a person. That person who you feel like is home to you, whether that be like new friends or a new romantic partner, things of that sort. But overall, it's like you're just wanting to feel like you're at home, you're wanting to feel that warmth, and you're wanting to feel that comfort. And for some of you, you can have a hard time manifesting that, or you feel like you have been trying to manifest it, but it's just not happening for you. And what I was hearing is that the answer lies within your shadow. So there's a trait within your shadow side, or there's something within your shadow side that will help you to manifest this new thing or this warmth or this emotionally comforting situation into your life. So for example, my shadow side, if you watch my videos on my main channel, I talk about this. My shadow side has a lot to do with hypersensitivity because I was raised in an environment where emotions were shamed. Like being emotional was very much looked down upon. So my feelings were constantly invalidated. And therefore that became my shadow. My shadow became extremely hypersensitive and explosive when it comes to my emotions. And sometimes obviously that causes me, issues or difficulties. But there is a beauty in that as well, because the only reason that I'm able to read tarot or to do spiritual work is because of my hypersensitivity. People who are hypersensitive have the ability to tune into higher realms easier. And like I said, because of that aspect of my shadow, I am able to tune into higher realms and read tarot. And now I make a full-time living as a tarot reader, and I was able to get my first apartment on my own. So you see what I'm saying? Basically, what I was hearing is that some of you are needing to observe your shadow because there's something in it that's going to help you to manifest the right person into your life, or it's going to help you to manifest some sort of blessing into your life. I'm going to pull one more just to see if I can get more specific. I'm going to pull one more card. So I hope that wasn't confusing. Sudden wealth. And if you don't know what your shadow side is, basically take a minute or take some time to self-reflect and think about what part of you comes out whenever you've been in any type of explosive relationships, or if you've ever been in any type of relationships or connections that have like disharmony. Kind of reflect back on what traits came out of you when you were triggered by those connections. Do you have a tendency to just shut down and become very cold, or do you have a tendency to explode? Do you become verbally abusive? It's like needing to observe those, whatever those traits are, and needing to find the positive in it. And when you take that positive, it's going to help you to manifest whatever it is that you've been wanting. That's like the clearest I can explain it. Like, I really hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, you could always leave them in the comments and I'll answer them. But yeah, I'm trying to see another example of that. Okay, I heard Capricorn. Okay, I know exactly what this is trying to say. Okay, so another example that I'm hearing is that for some of you, let's say that you have been in past connections and you notice that when things get too heavy or too explosive, you have a tendency to kind of shut down, or you have a tendency to be able to withdraw your emotions. And sometimes that could hinder you, meaning that you could sometimes want to express those emotions, but because this is part of your shadow, it's like you shut down at the most inconvenient time sometimes. And what I'm seeing is that for a lot of you, this could work in your favor, because what I'm seeing is that if you are trying to like maybe start a business or build a business, or you're just trying to get into you know, building financial abundance for yourself, that is a trait that's going to be very beneficial for you, because you'll have the ability to focus on work no matter what's going on outside of you emotionally. You see what I'm saying? So it's like there's this shadow aspect that exist, and you may, you know, see that it's harmful, but you have to, it's almost like needing to embrace the positive aspect of that shadow to help you manifest whatever it is that you want in life. Okay, so that's the best I can I can do to explain that. Let's jump into your actual reading now. So the first card out is the Scorpio card in the reverse and the Lovers card in the reverse. So with the Scorpio card being here, this energy talks about the dark side of Scorpio. So when I say the dark side, I mean the side that can be very paranoid, possessive, or just really, really in tune with other people's negative traits. So, and this is no offense, obviously, to Scorpios. Every sign has a shadow, but yeah, this is like the Scorpio shadow of just really tuning into other people's negative traits. And it gets to the point where you see negative traits in people so much to the point where everyone starts to look suspect to you, or everyone starts to look like they can't be trusted, because you have that, like I said, that ability to see a lot of darkness within people. And you have to be careful, because you can start projecting that onto people who don't have those actual traits, especially in a love relationship with these two cards being here. What I'm getting is that in the past, you could have dealt with very dark, emotionally intense connections where you got to really see that person's shadow side, like fully. And it's like you take those situations and you project them onto everyone that you meet, or every situation, because you're just trying to protect yourself, or you're just trying to make sure that you don't repeat things that have happened in the past. But also, it's like your intuition could be playing tricks on you. Because sometimes, like I said, when we've been exposed to a lot of darkness, we can start to confuse our fear with our intuition. We can start to confuse our paranoia with our intuition. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, this person is doing whatever they're doing. Like you observe like a pattern in someone and you're like, oh, I saw what they just did. That's exactly like so-and-so from my past. And my intuition tells me that this is a repeat cycle. And like your paranoia can start to cause you to think that certain people or certain situations are against you, but it's not your intuition, it's paranoia. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to pull one more to clarify. And what I'm hearing is that for some of you, this only comes out when you're in a strong connection with someone. Like if you keep the connection very surface level, I'm hearing that you're able to, you know, pretty much see people exactly for who they are and keep it grounded and rooted in reality. But when you start to get connected to them, that's when you really start to see their dark side. Which is interesting, because it's the opposite for some people. For some people, when they actually get attached to the person, they put on these rose-colored glasses and they can only see the good in them. But I'm picking up that with you, when you get attached to the person, it's almost like you can only see the bad in them, because there's this fear when it comes to attachment. So you take the opposite route of only seeing the bad, which is very interesting, because like I said, there's some people who only see the good in people when they're getting attached, which is, you know, somewhat normal, but it also can be something that's a bit destructive as well, obviously, if you can only see the good in people. And people do that because they have a hard time attaching to people organically. So they will project all these positive traits on a person so that they're able to attach. Usually people who attach in that way are people who have been neglected or abandoned in some way, and they have a hard time attaching to people in a healthy way. So they become very codependent and clingy. And the only way that their brain will allow them to do that is if they first project all positive traits onto the person, then they connect to them. And usually it's all downhill from there. But then the opposite is true as well, where some people have been betrayed or hurt or abandoned and neglected. And so they take the opposite route of only seeing the bad in people so that they won't be able to fully attach, so that they won't get hurt again. So very interesting. Let me pull one more. Justice card is here. Seven of Pentacles in reverse. Okay, what I'm hearing is that some of you might be feeling like you wasted your time if you were in a connection. Doesn't have to be romantic. It could be friendship. It could be like family members that you've had a close connection with. But I'm hearing for some of you that you feel like you've wasted your time in these types of relationships, especially if you, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. Because what I'm hearing is that some of you might have thought that you wasted your time in a relationship, but you actually didn't. And that the way you view that relationship is kind of off. Like you could have thought that someone you were involved with was being dishonest, or you might have thought that they had these negative traits that they didn't really have. But you didn't have the ability to see that because some of you have adopted that defense mechanism where you can only see the bad. I really hope this is making sense. And I've experienced this before too. I went through like a period in my life, or like this time in my life where I was super duper paranoid. I was tired of wearing those rose-colored glasses and attaching to people who were just dangerous. So I took the opposite route of only seeing the negative in people and wanting them to like really work to prove that they're different. But it's like I was setting up these obstacles and testing them, and they were ultimately failing because of the type of obstacles I was setting up. And then I was kind of like, yep, see, I knew it. I knew this person couldn't be trusted. I'm glad I saw it. But then I would think back later on in life when I started doing shadow work, I would think back to those connections and I would realize that I was projecting a lot of negativity onto them that actually wasn't there. So a lot of relationships in the past where I felt like I got played or I felt like they were dishonest. It's weird because when I started doing shadow work, I started realizing that I was projecting a lot of negativity onto them. Not to say that they didn't do anything wrong, but I was able to look back and see that I kind of made mountains out of molehills. And so I really hope that that's making sense, because some of you are feeling like you've wasted your time, or there's something that you felt like you've wasted your time on. And you felt like, oh, like I got to see this person for who they really are, and they were such a waste of my time. But it's almost like looking back on it, it wasn't a waste, because actually this person or this connection wasn't as bad as you thought that it was. It was like your defense mechanism. You were seeing them through like a trauma lens, if that makes sense. I'm gonna pull one more. Pull one more. And be mindful of this, because I don't want anybody like thinking back to an abusive relationship and being like, oh, okay, maybe I got that wrong. Like, no, if you were in an abusive relationship, you would know, like, you'd be able to tell. I'm not saying to, gaslight yourself or convince yourself that that wasn't it. I mean relationships that genuinely may have left you feeling a bit confused, because like the way that things played out or the way that they ended made you feel like this person was one way, but then when you kind of think back on it, like after you detach from them, you notice that it wasn't that bad, because your attachment to them was the thing that was causing you to project a lot of fear and negativity onto them. You see what I'm saying? Hopefully that makes sense. I'm gonna pull one more. And literally, I have been in relationships, or a specific relationship like this, where when I was attached, I could only see the bad in him because that's what I wanted to see to keep myself detached, or to keep myself from, falling too hard. And then after the relationship was over and I thought back to everything and kind of reviewed everything from a more logical standpoint, I realized that I was using the defense mechanism of just seeing the bad in this person when they actually really weren't that bad. Let me pull one more. And that's a positive thing, because I would have just gone on thinking to myself, this person was a bad person, they were a waste of time, I'm glad it's over, and then jump into a new relationship without seeing that defense mechanism that I'm actually projecting a lot of fears and bad traits onto this connection. Yeah, some of you could be aware of this as well, because the Lover's card is here. So some of you could be aware of this because this was a strong connection, or this was something that you were very emotionally invested in. So you could be thinking back on it and you could become aware of the fact that possibly you projected a lot of negativity onto the situation. If you've never seen my video on my main channel called What's Your Attachment Style, this is sounding a lot like having a dismissive avoidant attachment style, because in that video, basically I talk about people who are emotionally unavailable and the things that they do as defense mechanisms to make sure that they don't get too attached. So sometimes they will cling on to an ex that wasn't good for them simply because the new person that's in their life, they don't want to get too attached. Or like I said before, using the example before, they will find every little thing wrong with their new partner and nitpick at them. And that's their brain's way of trying to not let them get too attached, or they will take extra hours at work and become a workaholic and not spend time with their partner because that's their brain's way of helping them not get too attached. You see what I'm saying? So some of you could have that attachment style. And if you listen to what I was just saying, or the examples that I just gave, you can imagine that if someone is spending all their time at work and not spending time with their partner, and they are finding every little thing wrong with their partner, or they're still, pining after their ex because they have put their ex on this pedestal, not knowing that they're only doing that because they fear moving on. You can see how when a relationship like that ends, you can think, oh, wow, I wasted my time. I wasted my time on that. I didn't even get anything out of that. But whole time, it wouldn't have been a waste of time if you would not have used those defense mechanisms to push the other person away, you see? And I'm hearing that for some of you, you are the other person, meaning that someone could have treated you that way and you may not have understood why, and that's why. Or you could be the person that's doing this. I really hope this is not confusing, guys. With the Gemini card being here in the reverse and the Knight of Cups being here in the reverse, the Gemini reverse, what I'm hearing is no communication. And when there is communication, it's not necessarily balanced. There's something imbalanced about communication here. Let me pull one more. Yeah, okay. Knight of Swords. Wow, okay. Ace of Swords. All right. So yeah, like I said before, imbalanced communication, because the King of Swords is coming out in the reverse. So this is like communication that's very calculated. Like it's not actually trying to have a conversation for the sake of solving an issue or for the sake of making peace, but it's like entering a conversation with already having like your guard up, and like I said, calculated communication. You know how like when you're speaking to someone who you really don't trust, and so you have to maneuver the conversation a certain way because you don't want to tell them all your business, or you're kind of thinking like, what is this person talking to me for? Like, what's their intentions? Like, what's their angle? And that's why I'm feeling like a mistrust when it comes to communication. All right, this reading is confusing me. I hope that y'all are following. Because I'm trying to see how does that relate to the last messages that I just gave. It's kind of confusing energy here. Yeah, well, overall, I'm feeling like the paranoia from the last messages are carrying over into this one. Like I said, the paranoia of not fully trusting the person, or not wanting to get too close, or, projecting negativity onto another person that isn't really there. And it's like not being able to cut through that because it's like being guarded and feeling like you're at war with someone. Feeling like you have to get 2 steps ahead of them. And what I'm hearing is that some of you, this could be the way that you have been behaving in connections. That you could constantly be feeling like you're on guard, or constantly feeling like when you speak, it's not organic. Like you feel like you have to stay a couple steps ahead for some reason. This is like a very heavy defense mechanism here. And again, I have experienced this for sure. Like the first time I ever got discarded by a narcissist, after that, I became very, very hyper vigilant about people's words and their intention behind their words. So it was kind of like with every conversation, I was looking for a clue that they were trying to manipulate me. Or I was looking for a clue that they themselves are a narcissist now, because I don't want to get involved with another one and get discarded again. You see what I'm saying? So for some of you, this is how you could have been, or this is like some sort of defense mechanism that you may not realize that you have. So there may be a need for you to analyze, like, when you speak to people, is it organic, or are you constantly searching for some sort of inconsistency within their conversation? Like you have a conversation about their parents, you go on a date, go on a date and they tell you about their parents or something, right? And then the next time you see them, you talk about their parents, and you're listening for if that story still matches what they told you before. Because if there's an inconsistency, then you'll know that they're a liar and possibly a narcissist. You see what I'm saying? And again, this is a result of being extremely hurt. So I definitely sympathize or empathize with whoever this resonates with, because this is a result of being extremely hurt to the point where you're trying to avoid that feeling again. So it's almost like you have to be on guard and hyper vigilant, even when you're getting to know someone new. Well, especially when you're getting to know someone new, you feel like you want to read between the lines of everything. You want to go on their social media and like kind of look like, okay, wait, they tweeted this. What does that mean? What's the message behind that? Maybe they're involved with someone right now, or maybe they're like that sort of thing. Like really just trying to analyze the hell out of everything to make sure that you don't get hurt again, or to make sure that you don't get hurt again is what I'm hearing. Like you just want to have clarity at all times, at all costs. Like it's like you can't afford for even 1 second for you to be confused about someone, or else automatically you're going to think, no, they're up to no good. That you have to have full clarity. And again, this is a result of something going on in the past that caused this, like caused you to be hypervigilant, or caused you to just really analyze and nitpick, especially at getting to know new people. I'm going to pull one more. Six of Rods. Temperance. Okay, so Spirit wants you to know, my guides, your guides, higher self, universe, God, whatever you believe in, wants you to know that there will be no success with this method. This is a defense mechanism that a lot of you cannot help, because like I said, you've been through very painful experiences and you're trying to protect yourself. You don't want to experience them again. But what I'm hearing is that there will be no success with this defense mechanism because you're not able to see that sometimes you're reading things wrong, or you're seeing red flags where there are none. So it could be two extremes here. Like I said before, there's that extreme of someone who doesn't see red flags at all, and they're just like, I'm going to dive all into this, even though they've only known the person for 2 hours. That was definitely the past version of me. But anyway, and what I'm hearing is that some of you, that was the past version of you. Oh, this makes a lot of sense. Because when you're trying to change something about yourself, usually you'll swing to the opposite extreme first before you balance it. So if you're someone who dove into relationship, is that the word? Dove into relationships too quickly, and you saw no red flags and you got extremely hurt, you're swinging to the opposite extreme of seeing all red flags, or only red flags where there are none. So there's a need for you to find balance right in the middle. There's a need for you to be able to use your discernment while still not being too paranoid. Being just trusting enough to get to know people organically, but not too trusting that they're able to manipulate you or grow an attachment to them, and then you see their true colors. You see? I'm going to pull one more to see what the advice for healing that would be. I don't know if I'm going to get a specific answer, because I read for so many people that these answers are usually general, and that's what personal readings are for, to get more specific. But I'm going to see if I can see a specific solution to this. Eight of Rods. Queen of Swords. Queen of Rods. Okay. All right. So overall advice for changing this pattern or this defense mechanism, we have the Queen of Wands and the Queen of Swords. So a large part of healing this is going to be regaining trust for yourself. Whatever situations you've been in the past that you've been hurt in, it's almost like you feel as though you can't trust your own self. You feel like you can't trust your own judgment now because of those people in the past. You kind of feel like, even if you don't know this consciously or on a conscious level, it's like subconsciously you kind of feel like, if I were smarter, or if I were, what am I hearing? It's like you kind of beat yourself up because you feel as though you chose this person, so therefore somehow you're at fault for how they treated you. But that's not the case, because people can be extremely narcissistic and extremely manipulative. And when you want to master anything, you have to practice it for 10,000 hours. And people who are narcissistic or manipulative, they've been doing this for years and years. So they've put more than 10,000 hours into manipulating people. So therefore they are masters of manipulation. And even the smartest person, or even the most secure person, could sometimes fall for these things, because some of them are just that good. So for some of you, you could be beating yourself up like, oh, how did I fall for this? You know, because it's not always a case of, oh, I had a low self-esteem and I fell for this. Sometimes that is the case. And in that case, there's no shame in that either. Why would you shame yourself for having a low self-esteem? That's something that we need to have compassion with ourselves for. But even if you don't have a low self-esteem, it could still happen to you. The manipulation can still happen because, like I said, these are masters of manipulation. So beating yourself up or thinking I should have been better, or I should have been smarter is not productive here. So there's like a need for you to not beat yourself up, for you to not shame yourself. And there's a need for you to start to trust yourself again, because it wasn't one of those things where, okay, well, for some of you, it was one of those things where you were too trusting, in which you've learned your lesson, right? But for some of you, it's not necessarily that. Like I said, sometimes it's just them being that good. And so you have the knowledge and the wisdom now to be able to use your discernment, and you can trust yourself. And even at times where you trust and then something happens that doesn't turn out the way that it did, that doesn't turn out the way that you would like it to, you should still have the ability to, soothe yourself, have compassion for yourself. It's almost like when you get into a situation where you get hurt, when the person turns on you, you may turn on yourself. You may start to blame yourself, like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why am I so trusting? Why am I so this? Why am I so that? And then that itself makes you feel like you have to close off and be hyper vigilant, because it's like a part of you doesn't even feel like you can trust yourself, or a part of you doesn't even feel like if you do make a mistake that you can make it up to yourself or have compassion for yourself. I really hope that makes sense. So there's like a need to rebuild the trust with yourself. And that starts with self-compassion and understanding that there's nothing defective or wrong with you, and you don't need to shame yourself for being in these types of situations, because that in itself is just going to be counterproductive. There's also a need with the Queen of Rods being here for taking part in something that boosts your self-esteem. So for some of you who've been feeling kind of down in the dumps, you may need to do or take part in activities or just things that really will help your self-esteem, is what I'm seeing. And with the Eight of Rods being here as well, this is talking about slowing down, is what I'm seeing. So it's interesting because you would think that the slowing down would be advice for people who jump in too quickly into relationships, but that's not the case. What I'm seeing here is slowing down when it comes to harsh judgment. So being slow to harshly judge yourself, which in turn will help you to be more slow when it comes to harshly judging other people or being paranoid towards other people. So it's like slowing down with the harsh judgment and trusting that if you take your time when it comes to building connections, you don't have anything to worry about. Like, you don't have to use the defense mechanism of hypervigilance or projecting negativity, because as long as you're going slowly and building a solid foundation, that kind of decreases the chance of things being wrong or with you being manipulated or bamboozled in some way. With the Nine of Cups being here in the reverse as well, with the Moon card, this is basically saying that this defense mechanism, like for those of you who have that fear of connecting and you may be avoiding it or you may be projecting that negativity, it's going against what you actually want. Because with the Moon card being here, this lets me know that past situations that have harmed you is why you feel like you should kind of be more avoidant or closed off. But deep down inside, you still want that strong connection, because you wouldn't have started dating or investing in people if you didn't want that strong connection, right? So you still want that strong connection, and there's nothing wrong with wanting it. For some of you, you almost feel foolish now for wanting it, because of how things have went with certain people in your past. It's not foolish to want to have a strong connection, to want to have a strong connection with friends or family or romantic, like take it as it resonates. There's nothing foolish about that. And if someone betrayed your trust or hurt you in some way that made you feel foolish, they're actually the foolish ones, and that's their shame to carry, not yours, because there's nothing shameful about wanting healthy connections. And if you're in a connection with someone and they hurt you, it's easy to start feeling like, okay, it's foolish for me to even want this. I don't want this. But you actually do. It's your brain's way of trying to, like I said, distance yourself from love or intimacy by you convincing yourself that you didn't want it anyway, but you actually do want it. But you want it while it's balanced. But you've convinced yourself that you don't want it at all. Pull more. Empress, yep. Okay, I'll stop pulling because the cards are just repeating themselves. That talks about self-esteem, so I already gave you that message. Last two cards, we have the Virgo in the reverse, and the Strength card here. So with the Strength card being here in the reverse, it's going to take a lot for some of you to come out of this energy, because the Virgo in reverse energy is the energy of being on your own, being in isolation, nitpicking at everything that crosses your path, like just picking it apart to the point where you're like, nope, I don't want it. And again, that's that defense mechanism of projecting negative traits or nitpicking in order for you not to get attached. And it's going to take a lot of strength to break out of this, because it's going to take a certain level of vulnerability in order for you to break out of it. But there's a need for you to take baby steps. Like, first work on building the trust within yourself, work on being vulnerable within yourself, and then you can slowly but surely start being vulnerable towards other people. Just start small, take baby steps, because again, this defense mechanism doesn't develop unless you've been hurt. So you can't just kind of like jump from that to, all right, I'll throw that defense mechanism away and I'll just dive in. And that's not how it works. Like, your brain is going to have a lot of resistance to that. So you have to take baby steps. You know, like maybe start journaling your feelings. Even that is like a small act of vulnerability. Or, you know, make small talk with strangers. Even that's like a small act of vulnerability. Give a stranger a compliment and make that a goal for you to do every day. You know, just really small acts of vulnerability. It's gonna kind of help you to slowly but surely open up a little bit more. But it's just gonna, like I said, it's gonna be baby steps. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to dive into it too much. For some of you, I'm specifically hearing that this whole reading applies to someone else that you may not understand, and you may want to understand them. And they may be someone who's emotionally closed off and avoidant, and you may, in your mind, not understand why that is. So you've just kind of unlocked their secrets. But that's for a small group of you. For most of you, these messages are specifically for you. So now let's pull cards. I have no clue how long this reading is, so sorry if it's long, but let's pull cards now for outside energy. So you versus someone who is outside of you that's impacting you energetically. And again, this doesn't have to be romantic. This could be friendship, this could be work, this could be family, but this is just some outside energy that's currently affecting you in some way, shape, or form. So you're coming up as the Jupiter card, the Hermit card in reverse, and the Message card. So for some of you, you're feeling like you're ready to expand. The Hermit card is coming up again for the second time in reverse. So some of you are heavily in isolation, but I'm seeing that you may be wanting to get out of that, or the universe is wanting to push you out of that because you've been in it for a long time. And this is not the type of isolation where you go into isolation because you need some time to heal. This is like the isolation where you just don't trust people, so you start putting up very, very thick emotional walls, and it's almost like the universe is trying to push you out of that energy in some way, because there's some sort of abundance that's waiting for you, and this isolation or this guarded state of mind, or like this, the way you've been guarding yourself, is going to directly block whatever blessings or this expansiveness that the universe is trying to grant to you, is what I'm seeing. I'm going to pull one more. I'm assuming that this outside person is the person who either caused you to want to be in this isolated state, or it could be someone. Okay, I'm just going to pull cards first before I say anything else. Adjudication, wealthy man. Yeah, this may be okay. Yeah, okay. I see exactly what this is saying. So this outside energy could be the person or the situation that actually caused you to go into this isolation. Someone who you couldn't get on, I'm hearing couldn't get on the good foot with. So someone who it's like you just weren't on the same page, weren't on the same frequency, couldn't speak each other's language. It's something like that. Could have been someone who was quite cruel, because as soon as I heard frequency, I heard like that you could be on a bit of a higher frequency. Not saying that means you're perfect or anything like that. I'm sure all of you know this. You know, I have a humble soul tribe. But when we talk about being on a higher frequency, it's that sometimes, you know, some of us are not operating in this dark, shadowy energy that some people are. I mean, just to be honest, doesn't mean that we think we're above anyone or anything like that, but I think you know what I mean. There are some people who can be quite cruel and don't care that they're being cruel, so they operate from a low frequency. And yeah, like that's what I'm hearing when I hear like different frequencies. Someone who was at first meant to be on your path in order to teach you something, but eventually they became a blockage to your path. And this isolation that you've gone into is now the blockage, is what I'm seeing. And this person, they're coming up as wealthy man in reverse. They're quite energetically poor. Wow, what the hell? I've never heard that before. Energetically poor. Yeah. They're like, it's like energy vampire. Energetically poor. Sometimes when you're on a higher frequency, you can get a lot of like replenishment, love, and things of that sort directly from source. And someone from a lower frequency can sense that in you and kind of like latch onto you because they can't connect to source directly to get their energy. So because you have a direct connect, they'll come and take yours. It's kind of like those people who steal, what is it? They steal like oil or gas out of people's cars. Like they use a little siphon hose thing and take people's gas. It's like that, like siphoning energy because they can't get their own, or they're not on a high enough frequency to get their own energy from source or get replenished from source. So, all right, their energy, we have Neptune, Devil in reverse, toil and labor. Okay, so this outside person is delusional. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but they don't see. Oh, 1 second, let me pull one more. Three of Pentacles, Five of Rods. They don't see. I keep hearing they don't see. So they don't even realize what they're doing, or they have the ability to kind of twist it, warp it. Yeah, okay, yep. So this person lives heavily out of their ego or their shadow. What I'm seeing is that they prioritize their peace of mind over anything else. And that's usually a good thing. Except when it starts hurting people and you just don't care. Like, this is like the energy of like someone who does something that could be a bit hurtful, and they're able to explain it away to protect their peace. And this is a common human trait. So this doesn't even have to be someone who's like wicked. Like, that's something that kind of disturbs me about humans, is that they don't have to be a wicked or cruel person. But because human beings have this desire to feel good or to feel comfortable, if their comfort comes at someone else's expense, they're fine with that. It's scary being a human. It's really scary. But yeah, this person, like I said, they prioritize their comfort or their peace of mind over anything else. And even if it's at other people's expense. But I don't think they realize it, and nor do I think they have bad intentions, which is very odd. That's another odd thing about being a human. Like, someone can make you feel horrific pain, and it's possible that that person isn't even a cruel person and that they didn't intend to. Like, some people can inflict the worst type of pain on you and it's not even intentional. It's crazy to think about, because it just depends on what's going on in that person's mind. Obviously, there are people who do obviously inflict pain on people purposely, but then there's some who don't, who are just really dedicated to just wanting to just feel comfortable and good, and can just be so cruel, or can trigger something so deep in you that it feels like they've opened up some sort of traumatic wound within you, and you could just feel like this person is so extremely cruel, and the whole time that's not their intention, but it still hurts, obviously, and it's still going to feel like cruelty to you because it hurts you. And that's why I said it's trippy being a human. Let me pull one more. House card. Wow, okay. So remember in the beginning of the reading, I said that some of you are trying to manifest warmth. You're trying to manifest something to call home, something to feel like home. They're trying to do the same thing. And it's almost like I said, they're chasing this feeling of wanting to just feel content, wanting to feel like they're at home, wanting to feel peace. But in their pursuit of this, they have hurt you and caused you to go into isolation and be closed off and things of that sort. And it looks like it wasn't even intentional. This reminds me of those people on Twitter who are just like, no one owes you anything. If people want to leave and go start a new life, they don't owe you anything. And that's true. But then I always look like, yes, people don't owe you anything, and they don't have to stay with you forever if they're not happy. But they can still act with integrity if they choose to leave. And that's where a lot of people kind of like, they're missing it. They don't understand. It's not like, oh yeah, I want to hold you hostage with me forever to make me feel good. It's more so about the level of respect, compassion, and the way that people go about it, you know? So it's nothing wrong with chasing comfort or chasing peace or chasing happiness, but just be mindful of the way it impacts another person, because you could be inflicting a lot of pain and cruelty on a person unknowingly. I don't mean you, I'm talking about the other person here. And a good example that I can give is that I was once dating this guy, and he told me that he was involved with someone, and he was very, happy. Well, I can't say happy with them, but he liked her a lot, and she, a very nice person, I follow her on Twitter, very nice person, very smart, very pretty, very compassionate, like a very nice person. And he was going through a rough patch in his life. And so he decided that he was going to ghost her. Not because she did anything wrong, not because he was leaving to be with anyone else, but he said he ghosted her because he went through a rough patch of depression, and he just needed to be away from everyone because his depression was consuming him. And so therefore he just felt he had to cut ties with everyone and go into isolation, which is fine. But he didn't tell her this. He just ghosted and disappeared. She had no clue where he was. He disappeared for a full year. And I just had to ask him, like, do you understand that doing stuff like that to people can change them as a person? Like, what if her, like, being so compassionate and full of life and things like that, what if you ghosting triggered something within her and made her feel paranoid, made her feel like she can't trust people, and that compassionate, happy-go-lucky girl that she once was, you could have taken a piece of that from her because of your selfishness and because you felt like you didn't want to explain it, or you just needed time to yourself. So his intentions were not cruel, because he felt like his depression was bringing her down, even though she didn't express that to him. And he felt like he just wanted to get away to recover and heal. Nothing wrong with that, but it's the way he went about it. And I think that's what's coming up in this other person's energy, is the way that they go about things. It doesn't have to be intentionally cruel, but clearly it impacted you to the point where you felt like you need to go into isolation. All right, so sorry if that reading was super long. I'm going to finish pulling cards in the extended video. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on my Vimeo channel, and I'll leave the link to that in the description box down below. The more they try to, what I'm hearing is that their emotions annoy them. So whenever they have a strong emotion, it annoys them. And they want to basically force it away. Like, I'm going to just think positive and it's all good. No. It's like that feeling being within, you suppress it and try to sugarcoat it with, I'm just going to think positive. Obviously, positive affirmations are helpful, but if there's some sort of deep rooted problem, which it seems like there is with this person, no amount of forcing yourself to be positive is going to change whatever's going on deep down, because clearly they feel some sense of emptiness if they're continuously chasing the next best thing, or if they're so selfish the way that they are. Selfish people tend to be in self-preservation mode. And whenever I see someone who's like in survival mode, or their first priority is self-preservation to an extreme, I always know that at some point they needed someone and they were abandoned, or they needed someone and that person disappointed them or let them down. That's what usually causes someone to become self-serving, selfish, and things of that sort. It's like having your needs not met. Like when people turn to a life of crime sometimes, it's because they didn't have a certain need met. Maybe they didn't have a financial need met, so they started out by like robbing people, things of that sort. It's like when people are in self-preservation and survival mode to the point where they don't care about other people's feelings, just know that their emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical needs were not met in some way, and it caused them to block out everyone else's needs and focus intensely on their own needs to the point where they can hurt you very badly and not realize it.